text. They wrote Arabic very well, and we see some of these texts coming by on the screen. They wrote those from memory, right? They had that level of education and command of the language. Their forced importation into the Caribbean continued up until the 1830s. Plantation historians themselves, these are British historians that maintained slaves, and as we know, slavery is one of the most recorded, most heinous deeds, but one of the most recorded heinous deeds in human history. They recorded, the slave owners themselves recorded that among them were a large number of Muslim slaves. In one case, an Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, a Mandinka, wrote 2 autobiographies in Arabic, like Abdurrahman that was here on the mainland of the United States. His writings included a copy of the Holy Quran, which he had written from memory, and he, by Allah's grace, was repatriated to Africa in 1834. He was one of the few that went back. And in fact, after 30 years in slavery, an entire generation, he still maintained most of his Quranic memory. It was all still there, and he records that. And when he went back, they recorded that. The Pan-Caribbean Jihad, and this is something important as well, when we read Caribbean history, in around the 1830s, there was this argument that there are these slave rebellions. There are mass slave rebellions across the region. And what we, the Muslim historians going back, are saying is that these were not simple just uprisings against slavery. It was the Muslims who learned of the jihad coming out of West Africa. They learned from their brothers that we were fighting there too. And so they began to organize themselves in the region to fight back against slavery here in the Western Hemisphere. And so by the 1830s, from Brazil to the British West Indies, there was a mass uprising. In history, we call it the December Rebellion or the Christmas Rebellion. In Jamaica alone, they hung many, many people. Our first national heroes were from that uprising. But they were Muslim. They had been hiding in the church because this was the only place they could continue to study and keep education and teach other people. And so they wrote a letter authorizing the rebellion. And in between 1831 and 1832, there's a mass rebellion across the region. By 1833, the British were signing the Emancipation Proclamation. And this was directly as it relates to that. These uprisings were designed, orchestrated, and executed primarily as Muslim jihads against slavery. And like I said, out of it came the Emancipation Act. I will read for you very quickly one of the white historians and what he said about some Muslims that had come to him one morning. He said, "I had a visit one Sunday morning, very lately, from 3 Mandingo Negroes, natives of Africa. They could all read and write Arabic, and one of them showed me a Quran, written from memory by himself, but written. He assured me before he became a Christian." So again, they had used the church. It was the church became a shield for them because they couldn't practice Islam publicly. So this writer says, "I had my doubts on this point. One of them, Benjamin Cochran, a free Negro, was in the habit of coming to me on Sundays. His history is that of hundreds of others in Jamaica. Cochran says his father was a chief in the Mandingo country. I, Madden, the author, have not the time to give you an account of his religious opinions, but though very singular, they were expressed with infinitely more energy and eloquence than his sentiments on other subjects. He professed to be an occasional follower of one of the sectarian ministers here." So he said this himself, I'm an occasional follower of this church thing. And so he and his 2 friends came to visit. I had my doubts about them being sectarian followers. I called my wife and told her to prepare for a demonstration of Mohammedanism. I took up a book, as if by accident, and commenced repeating the well-known Musliman Salam to Prophet Allah. Ila Muhammad Rasulullah. In an instant, I had a Musliman trio, long and loud. My neophytes were chanting their names with irrepressible fervor. And Mr. Benjamin Cochran, I thought, would have inflicted the whole of the perspicuous book of Islam on me if I had not taken advantage of the opportunity for giving him and his companions reproof for pretending to be that which they were not. And I think more than anything else, as I read this, and as I'm reading it now and talking to you about it, is the fact that in addition to holding fast to the rope, as much of the rope as they could hold, they were also, in many cases, not afraid to preach Islam, to define themselves as Muslim in a severely hostile environment. And I think for that, I'm always thankful, and more so thankful, that we have programs like these to remember that we didn't lose Islam across the waters. That more than anything else, those that came before us held fast so we could dig the history and remember. Jazakallah.